Chelsea are officially back. That's right. We are now recording a little London is Blue After Dark.
After Dark.
Hopefully, your favorite Chelsea podcast and a part of the Men in Blazers Media Network. Dan here, and it is 12:17 a.m. on the 25th of July. We just watched Chelsea and Wrexham deliver a 2-2 thrilling, sarcastic thrilling draw as the start of preseason for Chelsea. The second match for Wrexham as a part of their Get Rex summer tour that they're doing right now.
The Rex Coast Tour, Dan. Come on.
It's been I think there's some Getting Rex going on. But look, we are going to do a little bit of a different pod as we talk about this match, maybe a little shorter than normal too. But we're going to talk a little bit about what happened in the first half, the players there, second half, the players that were on the pitch, who impressed us, maybe who had some opportunity, leaves us with more questions, and then finally talk a little bit about what did we learn, or maybe what questions do we have about what an Enzo Maresca system might look like. And again, I think the caveat we would put at the front of all of this, Nick, is that preseason is always at the start an exercise in getting people fit and not getting injured. And I guess if those are two of our base level expectations for this match, no serious injury, even though there was one moment where Christopher Nkunku touched his knee sitting on the ground that left me in agony.
Same with Carnes. In the second half did, yeah. But I guess by very low standards to clear, this was a football match that was completed. And that is really something. The pitch, again, no bueno. Very, very dry. I think they had a concert there like 5 days ago that looked like it had kind of screwed up the pitch. Again, this is classic Chelsea on preseason, and no injuries. So that we know of yet. Kieran Dewsbury Hall picked up one before the game. Jackson's carrying an ankle injury, but outside of those two, hopefully, knock on wood, everything's good.
I mean, look, you might joke lightly about a bar to clear for a football match being completed, but we also are recording this now the day after the Olympics issue between Argentina and Morocco. So don't joke about a football match being completed, because you never know what 2024 is actually going to be throwing at us here. But as we do, we did do some three-word match reviews to get it going, to get the engines firing, to get the thought cylinders pumping once again. We had some, look, Ollie Glanville with a bit weird, which felt extremely fair. We had a Chelsea fan with went as expected. Some people thinking about midseason form with awful as ever from Zach. You had a couple people like Samantha with work in progress, taking a little bit more of an optimistic view. There was one with Robert. I think they tried to get it in 5 words. They're saying long ass season. They're projecting forward what this season is going to be based upon 90 minutes of preseason football coming from Santa Clara, less than a couple minutes on the ground at this point. Nick, where is your head at with a 3-word match review to set the stage for what you took away from this match?
I've been kind of fumbling around with this one, which is pretty much the way that we played earlier. And I think the closest I've come to one is inverting the pyramid, but the wrong way. So that's 2 3-word match reviews just squished together. As long as we're breaking the rules after dark, Dan, that's what I got.
Well, the rules don't exist after 12 o'clock on the East Coast, and it's a new day. Look, I felt like I saw more of Rob McElhenney in the stands than close-ups of some of the players. So my 3-word match review is the gang preseasons, and a little ode to our Always Sunny fans, because way too much of owners. Though there was someone joking that we've heard more in the pitch side interview from Rob McElhenney from those owners than some of the Chelsea owners, which ouch, on the nose with that one.
Truth.
But look, there was a game of football. There was a 2-2 scoreline for it. There was a first half team. There was a second half team. I mean, Nick, as you look at the first half team that Chelsea rolled out, I mean, we got to see Robert Sanchez starting between the sticks. We had Google's lineup was the best one I could find in terms of an image. It doesn't line up with actually how it looked at the pitch, but there was Tosin, there was Badiashile, there was Colwell, there was Chukwuemeka, there was James, there was Lavia, Tyreek George got an appearance as a part of that first grouping, which was great. And Nkunku, Madueke. And as affectionate as our Discord is calling him now, they're just calling him Gucci. They're actually not calling him Gui anymore. They're just saying right to a nickname for him, which
Guiu? Is it
Guiu? Gui?
I believe
he
it's
got
Guiu.
15 different pronunciations over the course of the broadcast, which may be reflective of the commitment to preseason football.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, so immediately, what was shocking about this is that Reece James was not a right back at all. There's inverting your right back, and then there's just not playing with one, and that is basically what Chelsea decided to do. It kind of just looked like a 3-4-3 mostly, but less than that because of the clunkiness. I think it was more like a 3-2-4-1, really. Because the two midfield roles with Reece James and Romeo Lavia were so pronounced in the way that they were kind of centered around the ball. I had no idea what Carnes or Nkunku were supposed to do in this formation. It seemed everything was really compressed together. There was very little room to pass the ball in midfield past the kind of pivot area, and I think it forced George and Madueke to basically be on the sidelines because there was no room and everything was so compressed. Again, I was just kind of puzzled with the way that we were playing, but we did have control of the ball for the most part. But Wrexham did get in behind a couple times on us too, because we were playing so high up. And I think if you lose the ball in that system and you are not aligned as a defense, it is very easy to play against. And we know going back to last year, Dan, at Leicester, that Leicester got played through quite a bit. So, it was a very odd start, but I thought we did kind of get control of the game midway through the first half.
Yeah, and I mean that's the challenge of going up against back five too, and the way that Wrexham wanted to play is commit to a 2-on-1 situation, get themselves into advantageous positions, play a ball over the top, play a ball in behind that high line, get a 1-on-1 situation or a breaking ball situation to really move quickly, move swiftly on a counter. And again, they did find some opportunities to do that in that first half. I mean, we saw Levi Colwell get into a little bit of a shoving match, as it were.
Let's talk about that. 2 minutes and 31 seconds in, Dan. I mean, this was...
Have we ever had an earlier NPET shithouse moment of the match occur in the match? Sub 3 minutes. Might be a record.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, James McLean is a shithouse player, and he is known for getting into scuffles and, kind of just came through late on Colwell. Colwell took exception to that, and I thought they were going to throw fists. Like, it looked really intense. Colwell definitely is a bigger, stronger guy than McLean is, but McLean's pretty feisty. The benches had to get involved. Everyone had to calm down. And that sort of spirit will do us well, except if we get any sort of red card action. So let's avoid the red card. But, always good for someone who might be a future captain, who knows, to show that they're not going to take shit off someone like James McLean.
So if we're talking about the who impressed you, if you want to give me your either 1, 2, 3, your top one, who were the people that you walked away feeling excited about seeing more of in the rest of the preseason and heading into the start of the season after this first 45?
Yeah, I mean, I'll let you have Reece, who is my number one, but I want to touch on Guiu because I was really impressed by him, especially in the first part of the first half. He was the only player that made runs. He was the only player that looked like he wanted to hold the ball up and distribute it in forward areas. I think I joked with our WhatsApp group that I think we had 5 touches in the opposition third through the first 15 minutes. So there wasn't a whole lot going, but especially as the game or the first half progressed anyway, he and Levi started to get a little bit of a relationship going from a deep over the top ball to where Guiu was running into space. And his general hustle and press was very impressive to me. I genuinely did not know what to expect with this young Barcelona product who is just at the club and playing his first game at Chelsea. And I found that he was stronger than I anticipated. I think, a little bit of work to do technically when he gets into those dangerous areas, but almost had a couple of poached goals on set pieces. And I think we'll touch on set pieces as we get through this review. And I just found his overall physicality leading the line to be refreshing, especially when there wasn't a whole lot else happening. And so A for effort and probably a B minus for overall attacking play, but at least he was trying. And it was very evident that the press kind of started with him and everyone else kind of followed.
Yeah, getting into good spaces, making good runs, taking on the defender that was assigned to him. So, I mean, all things that you would expect from your central attacker that you have in the lineup. So, yeah, good performance, I think, from him overall. I want to bypass Reece James first because I want to stay with the attackers. I actually thought Tyreek George looked really good. Very interested to see. I mean, he and Madueke and Nkunku all got into 2-on-1 situations. They ended up with more defenders on them than I would imagine any of them would like. Not what would happen in most Premier League matches, but he definitely had some good delivery into the box that on a better day, or with a Nico Jackson potentially rushing forward, or Nkunku potentially running into the box, kind of getting on it, a little bit more space, not as compact. I think could have had an assist, one, maybe two, with the way that he was delivering the ball. Liked his movement, liked the energy. I think that was something that was interested in seeing more of as we kind of head through preseason. I think maybe, and then you mentioned Levi Colwell too. I think he was the other one that kind of topped my list in terms of delivery, execution. I mean, I think we didn't get to see as much of him in the back half of the season due to injury. Obviously, we're very excited about him in the beginning of the season last year. So to me, this is a great springboard opportunity from this game just to continue to get fit, get healthy, be involved, and figure out, like, are we going to be doing a lot of back three with these midfielders or these defenders who become midfielders? Are we going to potentially put ourselves in a situation to, maybe play him on the left side of a back four? I mean, there's a lot of questions still, but I enjoyed, those were maybe two of the other performances. We're rounding out like a top three that I liked, but I know you wanted to talk about Reece James too.
Yeah, I mean, look, Reece's quality is evident. I think he looked lost in defensive midfield for a little bit, and then as the game kind of moved into Chelsea having a nice passing pattern, and I think towards the end of the first half we looked much better than we did early. His set pieces were on point again, and obviously there's been work done with Cueva very early because our set pieces look dangerous for the first time in 2, 3, 4 years on that front. And so that is very good. And I'm just very curious as to how this progresses and if, Maresca decides. I think this is one of my main questions for the future, and then I'll punt to the end. But if he decides to invert the left instead of the right, because I think the only thing that we were really missing is that overlap run from our fullbacks in this game where they were able to get wide, and we know what Reece and Gusto can do from those wide positions, crossing the ball in and trying to play with a little bit more width than maybe we looked like we were going to do. But I think he and Lavia settled in pretty decently to midfield. I mean, he was definitely just a midfielder. Like there was I think he got back to right back like 2 or 3 times in transition, but it was like few and far between. It wasn't as if he was a right back that came in and then came back out. Like he was very, very settled on the right side of that pivot. And Lavia played pretty good too. I think there was a lot of waxing lyrical about his performance the first half. I thought he was pretty decent. Started off a little shaky, got better, kind of the theme in the first half. But Reece's quality is something that we have missed a lot of over the last few years. And it became pretty obvious to me, Dan, that it would be nice to have him play football for us again.
I mean, look, we heard it in the press conference. His objective this year is to stay on the pitch, and we would like that to be the case, both for avoiding fitness issues and avoiding disciplinary issues. Let's make sure that everything comes into the fold and makes it a better season for him. I would just say ones or players who I now have maybe more questions about, maybe even just after 45 minutes. The Chukwuemeka performance was not what I was expecting from Karn. So then maybe there's some questions there. I think Badiashile looked a little uncomfortable at times. And then, I think I'm going to continue to have questions about Sanchez. I'm going to continue to have a lot of questions about our goalkeeper position, from the links to external goalkeepers that we might be looking to bring in, and Sanchez as well. But I mean, anyone else on your question list beyond that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Madueke covered himself in glory. I know that he's been training really well, and maybe he was just a little too amped for this. And like, again, it's preseason; it really doesn't matter. But compared to George, who had a little bit more patience in the final third, he looked scrambled. And there was one move where Madueke has a wide open, and Kunku was like literally like waving his arms, like "Give me the ball," and he just kind of kept it too long and got tackled. And the other one that I would kind of call out is Tosin, who in this position, which is kind of a high line right sided center back, he got caught out on that wing a couple of times just because the line didn't step up together to play the offside. And if that happens, he's cooked. He's not quick enough to make up that ground, and then it's you're one on one with Sanchez. That's not what you want. And Premier League teams will cook us if that is what we're trying to do. Not that he had a terrible game or whatever. I'm not throwing him under the bus, but like that line did not move together all game. They were scrambled, and in transition, Tosin and Badiashile got way too close to each other to the point where they almost collided and left a runner one-on-one on goal, who was luckily offside. But if he wasn't, do your own imagination on what happens there. No bueno. But he's huge. That is my takeaway from Tosin.
Well,
massive. And yeah,
good to know that Tosin is as huge as advertised. But that's going to do it for the first half analysis. We will be back after this break where we talk about all the players. That's right. I basically fully changed 11 when it comes to the second half of the match. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. All right, Nick. So it was wholesale changes effectively for the first half to the second half. So we saw Raheem Sterling come on, Lazo Guchukwu, Armando Broya, Ben Chilwell, Malo Gusto, West Fofana coming back. Very excited for Big West to be back and be healthy. Another youngster, Josh Appanyong, made it onto the pitch as well, which was exciting. Angelo getting an opportunity. And again, always cool to see Lucas Bergstrom getting some cameo minutes here or there for Chelsea when you need a replacement goalkeeper, because Petrovic right now nursing a bit of an injury too. So look, that was the full changes. We did not see Vega. We did not see Eddie Beach. Those were the two players who didn't get any type of minutes or opportunity. So beyond that, like, thoughts on second?
I think it was Disasi and Mudryk were the only two to not make the bench just for selection.
Correct.
And then
Caicedo just came back. Jackson's nursing his injury issue.
And then Dewsbury Hall.
Yeah.
Those are the five that didn't make it. But yeah, everyone except for Vega and Beach play. And Karn's got a full 90. So he played the second half. And I think if you just want to cover off on the second half was a unmitigated disaster of sorts. It just, again, anytime you switch a full 11, it's going to be difficult. And again, this is not me getting too down on the team, but this 11 played much worse than the first 11 in every category. And if you look at the way that the team played in possession, it was a lot tougher to move the ball. It was a lot tougher to keep control of the ball. They did not pass to each other well. The shape completely disintegrated as compared to the first half, where the shape actually got stronger and looked a lot more efficient. And Dan, the transition defense is a sieve in the second half. I mean, we got played through twice. The first time, Ugochukwu gives the ball up in midfield because he doesn't sense defender behind him who takes it and passes the ball up. He then doesn't close down the cross. The cross gets all the way through our defense. You could argue maybe they're offside. Doesn't really matter. They slot home the goal. It's not good mostly, and so I'm pretty. I leave the second half feeling a lot worse about the total performance than I would have if we just played 45.
Well, that is a take. There's one way to feel about it. I think in general, again, my bar is, did we walk away without an injury that we know of? And
Sure.
did we get minutes into the legs? And I think we generally did that. I'm also looking at this grouping of players. And, I think if you look at that first grouping of players, there's probably more people who would start in a Premier League game for Chelsea than I think that second grouping. And so I do grade a little bit on a curve for that reason. It's like, hey, the second half team is really not necessarily the Premier League starting bunch. I mean, we're going to be sending Andre Santos back on loan. Angelo is most likely going to go on loan. Lucas Bergstrom will not be sniffing the first team. I mean, you're looking at, Armando Broya potentially getting sold. I mean, Leslie Ogochukwu got pulled from the France reserve squad from the Olympics to come back and I think fill in for some of the, the advancement of Enzo into later competitions. Caicedo coming back a little bit later, Conor Gallagher going later. So we're deficient in our midfield positions. So, I mean, those are things I have in mind. If I were thinking about anyone who had a really strong, I have a hard time endorsing anybody for having a strong half. I will say the build up for the goal that Ugochukwu scored was really good.
Yeah.
And I think that was it was a good take. So not every midfielder we've had in Chelsea history knows how to score a goal. You think about the number of that you can count on one hand of goals that Mateo Kovacic scored. And Leslie Ogochukwu chipping away really quickly at Kovacic's number there with some cameo minutes.
He scores when he wants, Dan. He scores when he wants. Just remember that. Come on.
But who impressed you? Did anyone impress you in the second half or is it all questions?
All questions. I mean, I think the most comfortable looking player was Andre Santos in midfield. He looked like he knew what he was doing. He was picking his head up. He was picking out passes. He was not getting closed down by the opposition. He was moving the ball around. Was it always the most effective ball movement? No, but he did look the most effective to me. I would give a slight nod, I suppose, to someone like Angelo, who did stick to his position, which others we will talk about did not necessarily do, and could have had a couple assists in this, in the second half if there was some better kind of positioning in the box. But he looked okay to me. I mean, I think both of them were fine. Everybody else, I think Wes had an error on the second goal in transition that wasn't great, but it was also not his total fault. But he did make a few tackles and look pretty strong. Other than that, no, I'm coming up empty.
Yeah, I think I saw more comments on Twitter and Discord about Malagusto's short and than I did about some of the player performance in the second half. So, I mean, that's how thrilling it was in the.
Can I just talk about Gusto?
Sure.
This was a complete. I have no clue what he was doing. I don't know if he knew what he was doing. Like, he started off doing what Reece was doing, which is playing largely in midfield, although he kind of did more inverting. It looked like he was going back and forth a little bit more to start. But then he just decided that he was going to keep going forward. He played as an 8 for a significant portion of the second half. He switched sides with Andre Santos. Andre Santos moved to the right. He moved all the way over to the left side of midfield, which is not really how I saw that working. And then when we were up in the box and trying to score goals, he was almost playing as like a number 10 at times and getting that far forward as a supposed inverted right back. It was all over the place, and it contributed to the shape breaking down pretty significantly. So I think unless he was asked to just go vibe the entire half, I genuinely have no idea what he was being asked to do. And I think it's screwed with Josh Akimpong, who was trying to, I think didn't have the best half, admittedly, but trying to keep the line
I did think his
together.
shot
And
was going to go in though. It was a
that would have been
yeah.
nice. It would have been really nice. But like, it was the shape really did collapse, and there was nothing that could really happen. I think Chilwell did well to stay back for most of the half and not press too high up. Otherwise, West would have just been on an island by himself. But the shape, I have no clue what they were trying to do. The only positive at the end was Carnes finally started to get some touches around the box, and he did improve in the second half slightly. Not too much, but he is tricky in the box to mark. I mean, his footwork is really quick. He keeps the ball really close. And I think him and Sterling started to develop a little bit of a pattern in the second half, which was nice. But yeah, it was pure. It felt like the whole second half felt like the end of a Premier League game where you're chasing a goal to me. Like, it just, everybody go up and like, whatever happens.
I think that's a fair assessment. Just on a substandard pitch, as we referenced earlier. So again, I think that second half, more questions than answers in terms of player performances. I think more questions about like who will actually be a part of the first team squad versus being out on loan, being part of the dev squad. I think, a couple of these players, again, Bergstrom, Angelo, Santos, Omando Broya, like Lazuguchuku. There's not a lot of starters for Chelsea. And I think as we get people back from the international breaks that they have kind of earned themselves over the next 1, 2, 3 matches, people get back into fitness. I think you'll start to see this round out. You'll start to see more of the senior team players get 60 minutes versus 45 minutes, or go 70 minutes, because this is all a conditioning exercise too. This is all getting back into a rhythm so that they can play a full Premier League game without running into any issue to develop the system, which I think is what we want to talk about next. But any last thought on these players before we talk about Maresca, opinions of just the overall performance and what we want to see out of the next match?
Yeah, I mean, the only caveat I have is like they landed in the States on Monday, and we, I think it was late Monday, early Tuesday. And so they had like one sleep before this game. I anticipate they will start to look fresher and fresher as the Premier League, or not the Premier League, the preseason goes on here. So yeah, at least that's my hope.
All right, well, last ad break out of the way. And when we do that, we'll come back and talk about thoughts on the next couple games and then what we want to see from Maresca moving forward. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. All right, Nick. So people don't have to wait too long because Chelsea will be back in action this weekend on Saturday for the next match in the preseason tour. And Chelsea will have work to do between now and then to figure out a little bit more structure because, again, there were points in this game where it was the return of the amorphous blob, where you really had no idea what the shape was, what the attempt at some of the passing patterns were supposed to be. There were times where patterns. There are also times where instead of the shape of a triangle, it was a parallelogram or a trapezoid, just really busting out those shapes for you.
Yeah, and look, Saturday's against giant killers Celtic, so who took down Man City the other day. So that's look, I mean, it's going to be interesting. We are going to be live after the game, which will roughly be 6 Eastern on Saturday. So get your game plan together. Hit that bell icon on YouTube, and you'll see our lovely faces talking about a either win or loss or a draw at whatever point. Yeah, I have some concerns. I thought that the team would be a little further along in developing what the system would look like at this point. I mean, they've had a few weeks to drill it, and it feels like we're a ways off. I mean, like there are 3 weeks until the Premier League season starts. There's no time. to really get this thing going. And so I am curious as to who plays and how long they play as the preseason advances. I'm almost curious, Dan, just based on the way the second half went versus the first half, if it's like the players who have the most comprehension of the way the system should be played are going to start to cement themselves versus those who are maybe not so in tune quite yet. And like, look, I'm not being harsh on these guys. At least I hope I'm not coming off that way. I really worry if you try and play the way that we did against City on the 18th of August. Like, I think that's going to be tough unless the team really picks up how to keep the shape together and not give away easy counterattacks. So I think it might be a like whoever does their studying the most and applies it the best gets the most minutes, and you kind of just roll with that until you get the rest of the squad there to pick everything up.
Yeah, I guess I would caution a lot of, I think, some of the reaction that at least I was observing, where I think there was like the, there was there's the meme that I think you shared. Our expectations were low, but holy fuck.
That was about us in transition. Dan,
I know, but I'm glad you specified. I was going to get there, but you could, let you save face yourself. So ultimately, I just would caution that like it's still a young team, and it's still a team with a manager who's basically been with that team fully for about 2.5 weeks at this point. This was, as we talked about, the first preseason match. I think there's still an opportunity for a lot of hope, a lot of optimism. Again, even that first lineup, there are players who started in that who are not going to be starting once we get our full complement of players back, right? Like we don't have Cole Palmer in too, right? Like the leading goal scorer, leading assist for Chelsea last season. So a lot of things that just aren't going to look right. But what we want to see is every match, we want to see more fitness. So we want to see players be able to go from 45 minutes to 60 minutes or to 65 or 70, because you can't be a player that we rely upon who is needing to get subbed every 70 minutes. It can't be the Kovacic for Ross Barkley type of swap that had to occur because, there was just a lack of fitness. And so I think that's one thing. And I think the other thing is comfort with the patterns of play, repeatable actions. Like we want to see that there's a consistency within action, within buildup. And we didn't see a whole lot of that within either the first or the second half. So like those are the things that if I'm looking at this, just the next match, what I want to see from Enzo Maresca and his team, more fitness, match over match, and repeatable patterns that we're seeing over time. Hey, this is happening again. We're building up the same way. There's a comfort with how we're moving the ball. And how does then that transition from the defense to midfield to attack, and then turn into goals?
Yeah, I am mostly intrigued to see how the team develops in the final third. I thought that for large parts of this game, our first goal was kind of scrappy, right? It was kind of a poacher's finish from Nkunku, and the second goal was a little bit more of a technical buildup, which was nice to see. I'm really intrigued to see how those patterns exist outside of the back five. The back five can pass the ball to each other just fine because it's relatively low stakes. It was the blob is really what developed with the other five and their positioning and how they were moving around. So that's really what I'm most curious about, and where Nkunku picks up. So like there were times where Nkunku was dropping really, really deep when everything was super compressed in the first half. He was like almost playing next to Lavia at points. And I was like, go away, go up, go up front. And then Guiu was the one who was really pushing this thing forward as kind of the engine to get it, everyone moved up the pitch. And then finally it started to develop where George and Madueke started to push up, and like, okay, now we're starting to see some patterns develop, and they both became a little bit more confident in the ball, and so on and so forth. So yeah, I mean, like, I'm not being over dramatic. We do have 3 weeks until the season starts, and we I think we learned last year that when you get off to a slow start in the season, it can really hamstring you and put a lot of pressure on, right? And so this is not me saying we're doomed. It's just me saying we have a lot of work to do in 3 weeks. And, I'm really hopeful that they experiment with the left-hand side inverting at some point, because to me, I think you miss some of Reece and Mallow's best qualities up the wing when they're inverted. That is my takeaway. Not because Reece couldn't be an excellent midfielder. I'm not sure that Mallow could be an excellent midfielder, but I'm very sure that Reece could be. I just think you miss some of their special sauce when they aren't a little bit more advanced up the wing, personally.
Well, look, I think you're right. There's no sky is falling moment yet. Again, it was 90 minutes plus a couple extra in Santa Clara where tens of people took in the match. The stadium not full at all with the upper bowl.
That's not, by the way, that's not us making fun of anyone who was there, because the tickets were incredibly expensive. Yes. The weather was extremely hot. Our friend David Pastor said the traffic was really bad too. So like, if you've ever been out there or lived out there, it can be hell sometimes to get going. I heard that's not us making fun. It's just they didn't really sell tickets for this.
Oh, $70 for parking on site was the number I heard. $60 for offsite parking.
Lord.
Like, again, this is why preseason can be very challenging if you're not a local, and even people who live in the Bay Area, getting to Levi Stadium is not the easiest. Like, it's not centrally located. You're going south of the city to go to that game. So again, I feel like I'm talking more about geography over the last couple episodes, but boy, oh boy, very interesting to talk about why it's a challenge maybe to fill that stadium. I can imagine the game at Notre Dame with Celtic is going to be probably a more lively affair this weekend. So, like,
Notre Dame, this isn't the French cathedral, Dan. It's Notre Dame, the fighting Irish, and so we'll see. I imagine that will be a better turnout, though. I think that'll be a pretty cool backdrop for a Chelsea game.
Well, again, we will stay tuned after that one. We'll be going live after the match, so we'll enjoy that. We'll definitely dropping a few more YouTube videos this week and next week as we get into the full swing. We're doing our preseason duties as well. We're getting back into full fitness too. We got to get our reps. We got to get our minutes. And we also need to get our shut-eye as well, because some of us have to work tomorrow as well. So we're going to get back to our 2-a-days just like everybody else here. But we hope you enjoyed this one. Another London is Blue After Dark to celebrate the preseason, and a 2-2 draw against Wrexham to kickstart the Enzo Maresca era. But that's going to do it for this episode. Like, subscribe, enjoy the videos. Sign up for the free newsletter. Leave 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. I always appreciate it. But until next time, Chelsea fans, you know what to do. Keep the blue flag flying high.